Hi everyone, in this first video on the Parthenon I'm going to go over the key facts that you'll need for your introductions of your essays. I'm going to go over the history of the building and I'm also going to go over its key architectural features. So make sure that you're taking notes in your workbook as we go through so that you've got the pages all completed and you can refer back to your notes. So firstly, a fact file, and as I said, these are some really useful details that you can use in the introduction of your essay to impress your marker right from the beginning. So it was made in the 5th century BC. Construction started about 447 and finished in 438. In terms of the architectural order, as we will see when we look a bit more closely, it is Doric in style, but it also has some Ionic features, and this combination of the two is quite unusual. In terms of the floor plan, it is peripteral. Remember, that means it's got columns all the way around the perimeter. It is octo-style, meaning there are 8 columns along the front and back, and 17 along each side. The temple is made out of pentelic marble, limestone, and it's also got some terracotta and wood. And the two architects who created this building were called Ictinos and Callicrates, with the artist Phidias supervising. And finally, the base, the stylobate of the temple, its dimensions are 69.5 meters long times 30.88 meters wide, and those numbers will be important later on. So moving on to the history of the Parthenon. So this temple that we are studying, this version of the Parthenon, replaced an earlier temple that was created to Athena Parthenos, Athena the Virgin Goddess. But this temple was destroyed by the Persians when they invaded Athens in 480 BC. And so they needed to create a new one. It also, as well as serving as a temple to Athena, as we'll see, was a treasury housing funds of the Delian League, which was an alliance of Greek states to prepare in the case of future Persian invasions. And it was used a lot by later cultures, which is why it still survives in some form. So after the Romans took over and then the Roman Empire became Christian, it became a Christian church dedicated to the Virgin Mary. It then became an Islamic mosque in the 1400s, and then it was used to store ammunitions. But when it was bombed in 1687, obviously those ammunitions exploded and it was badly damaged. And finally, a British man, Lord Elgin, removed many of the sculptures in 1800 and he sold them to the British Museum, where most of them still are today. And so this is part of a big controversy around the Parthenon. So the building that we study today is quite different to what it would have originally looked like at the time period. So lastly, I'm going to go through the floor plan of the Parthenon and the key features that you need to know. So firstly, as we know with Greek temples, we've got the naos, that main room, which housed the cult statue of Athena Parthenos, who is standing just behind that rectangle there. That rectangle is actually a pool of water. And that water was used to keep the ivory of the statue moist. Unusually, however, it also has a rear naos. It has a smaller back room, which was used to store the treasury of the Delian League. Then we've got that front porch, the pronaos, in front of the naos at the eastern end, and balancing that out on the back, we've got the opisthodomos, the back porch. There are 3 steps on the base. We've got the stylobate and the stereobate, so 3 steps up. In terms of the columns, as I said earlier on in the video, this is an octo-style temple, meaning there are 8 columns along each end, and it is peripteral. The columns go all the way around it. Those columns, those exterior columns are Doric in style, as is the exterior frieze, meaning that it alternates between triglyphs and metopes. In the back, the rear naos, the columns, those 4 columns there, are actually Ionic in style, meaning they have the elaborate curved volute capital, and these are the only Ionic columns in the Parthenon. However, the 2 sets of columns in front of each door, those pro-style columns in the pronaos and the opisthodomos, are both Doric in style. There's 6 of them, which sort of adds depth as you enter the 2 sides of the temple. But around the inside of the temple, and it's unusual that there is this extra frieze, there is an Ionic frieze, which we'll look at in more detail, and this is Ionic in style, meaning it's a continuous piece of art rather than alternating triglyphs and metopes like on the exterior frieze. In the naos, the front room of the temple where the cult statue is housed, you can also see that there's another U-shaped colonnade. This one is 2 stories in height, like 2 columns stacked on top of each other, which makes Athena look even bigger, and it is Doric in style as well, and it's U-shaped, framing the goddess. So make sure that you've got all of these key features in your workbook. You've got the floor plan really clearly annotated, because all of these facts we're going to need in class when we elaborate on them further. See you there.